Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our crowdfunding for your hockey club with ourselves, Crowdfunder, and our partners this evening, Sporting Assets. So I'm Zoe, I'm the community manager at Crowdfunder. This evening, we've been joined by Ellery Lavender from Sporting Assets, who's going to talk through the Pitch Together Fund and what it is that Sporting Assets do and can support you with. I'll be talking a little bit about crowdfunding, and we've also been joined by the wonderful Kate and Helen from Alton Hockey Club, who can talk through their experience of running a successful crowdfunding campaign and also the process of applying for that Pitch Together fund as well. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We have allowed an hour for this session, and that does include a Q&A. So please do use the chat box. You might have seen I've put a few messages in there already to ask any questions that crop up throughout the session. This is a live session, however, we are recording it, so we will make sure that we send out that recording to you by way of a follow-up email, including any of the resources that we discussed this evening as well. Now, if you have any issues with your internet connection, the best thing to do is to exit the live room, so exit the webinar, and then follow the link that you were sent to join the live session so that you can rejoin us in the room. You might have actually lost some of that archived chat in the box, so just drop us a message and we can bring you back up to speed. Now, if you find that our videos are sitting across the slide and you're missing some of the content on the slides, please just head up to the top right of your screen. You should be able to select the side-by-side speaker view, and that will remove our videos from the slide content. Okay, let's get started. So first of all, let's introduce Ellery from Sporting Assets, who's going to talk through what it is that Sporting Assets do, who they are, and the Pitch Together Fund for you. Thank you so much, Ellery, for joining us this evening.
Brilliant. Thank you, Zoe.
I will
Um,
hand over to you.
Thank you very much. So many of you have probably met me before, but if you haven't, I'm Larry. I work as an investment manager for Sporting Assets. So a very quick whistle-stop tour of who Sporting Assets are, as I'm sure many of you will already be aware. We are both an advisor and an investor in the sports sector. So that kind of means that our work combines both funding organisations and also supporting organisations to develop and deliver their projects. So being both the funder and the person that can kind of help you develop that project. So over the past 10 years, Sporting Assets has supported over 250 community sports organisations, be that with facility development or investment readiness, or by providing funding. We also design and manage funds. So we've worked with England Hockey for a number of years on this project. And we finally kind of got it over the line back in November. So we're still in very early days. But we also have funds with British Gymnastics, the Club Capital Fund, and also our own fund, Sporting Capital. So to date, we've enabled over £300 million investment into the sector, either through our own funds or through government funds. And we're very much looking forward to doing more of this through the Pitch Together Fund. So very quickly, the Pitch Together Fund is a loan fund that's looking to invest in capital projects such as pitches, clubhouses, or other key facilities at your hockey club. As I've mentioned, it's very recently launched, and we're kind of currently in the process of making our first few investments. And we have a couple of projects in assessment at the moment too, Alton being one of those who will speak later. The fund is very much kind of an impact first fund. So what we want to see is projects delivering more impact and becoming more reflective of their communities. Very quickly, clubs need to be based in England, incorporated, and have security of tenure to be eligible. They almost also must be able to afford loan repayments and hold club mark accreditation or be working towards it, and also being committed to delivering an impact plan. In terms of then the fund terms at a glance, so this is at a very high level, but just for information, kind of loan size ranges from 25 to 300,000, but higher by expectation. And we're expecting the average loan to be around 150,000. Our interest rate is fixed at 6%. We've been really fortunate that Sport England have provided funding towards the project, which has meant that we're able to lend at a competitive rate. Repayment terms, we're looking usually at around 8 years with a 6-month capital repayment holiday. We're looking at unsecured, but security being considered on a case-by-case basis. There is grant funding available if you are recycling your pitch, then we can potentially look at some grant funding for the recycling element of your project. And the funding window is until October 2027. That is hopeful to extend. And this is kind of the first 2 years that we're running in the first instance. So effectively, if you've got a project that you want to talk to us about, please talk to us sooner rather than later, because not only do we need to kind of lend the funding that we've got by 2027, but we also need to build a case to extend this fund for longer. The assessment process takes between 3 to 6 months, but depending on the complexity, it may be kind of towards the higher end. But if it's quite simple, quite straightforward, then we're probably looking more like 3 months. So again, please do talk to us sooner rather than later if you've got a project in mind. Brilliant. And then lastly, because I'll hand over to Zoe and Alton, who'll be far more interesting than me, but in terms of the capacity building program, so this fund is quite unique in that it's got an inbuilt capacity building program. So effectively, what that means is that there's lots of support available to clubs to kind of build up the project and to deliver the project. So this might be one-to-one advice, it might be one-to-many webinars such as this one, it might be financial support, business support, but effectively the sooner you kind of submit an expression of interest to us, the sooner we can identify what support might be available for you through the fund. But this fund is very much a collaborative process, so it's not your typical kind of grant process where you apply for a grant and then you're either accepted or declined. It's very much that we will kind of work with you along the process and kind of try our best to support you to become investment ready. So as I've mentioned, this is one of our forums within our kind of one-to-many, and this is kind of specifically around Crowdfunder as a means of engaging your community and potential match funding for the loan program. So I'll hand you back over to Zoe now, who can talk about that in a lot more detail.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. And I guess in terms of questions specifically about the Pitch Together Fund, we've got you for the whole session, haven't we, Eleri? So any
Yeah.
questions specifically, please pop them into the chat box, maybe about your specific eligibility or any criterias that you might need to meet. But for now, let's move on to the crowdfunding element and we'll loop back round for questions a little bit later on. Thank you so much. Okay, so for some of you joining us this evening, you might not be too familiar with Crowdfunder UK. You might have an understanding, sorry, of the concept of crowdfunding, which is essentially raising money from the community of people around you. You might be familiar with digital fundraising platforms that are out there. We are one of many. Crowdfunder UK is a UK-based company. We've been around for approximately kind of 13, 14 years now. And over that time, we have developed a crowd of over 5 million who are essentially supporting all of those different amazing projects, along with our partners as well. And that's something that I'll talk about a little bit later on. We work with different partners, corporations, organisations, NGOs, philanthropic organisations, in order to distribute match funding to eligible projects. So projects coming through the platform have raised more than £420 million over that time, and more than 100,000 amazing causes across the UK have benefited from raising money in this way. So just a brief overview of what crowdfunding is then. So with us, what you would do is set up your crowdfunding campaign page, your fundraising page. With that, you're going to start telling your story to your supporters. So we like to encourage people to think of that page as a shop window into your club or your organisation or your project idea. Really help your potential supporters understand who you are, what you're raising money for, what that kind of impact that you might be able to create is if you raise the money that you need to. You go on to set your fundraising target and you can decide how long it is that you need to raise that money. It's then up to you to go and spread the word. So promote your crowdfunding page into your networks. And we've got lots of help and support available to help you do that effectively. We have webinars such as this. We have drop-in sessions where you can come along and ask any questions about your particular fundraising journey or your particular crowdfunding campaign. We also have lots of available help on our website, which is free to access as well. So please do engage with us throughout the process of crowdfunding. And then ultimately get funded and be able to put your amazing ideas into reality, into fruition. Spend that money that you've raised, deliver on any of those rewards that you might have listed on your page, and we'll talk about rewards a little bit later on. So why would you consider raising money in this way as opposed to maybe straightforward grant applications or bids? And that might be something that you're very familiar with, or in-house fundraising that you might be doing already, so in-person fundraising. There are lots of added benefits to raising money in this way, to crowdfunding, that go beyond really the financial raise. Things like building validation and awareness around what you're doing. So that validation comes in the form of you as project owners building confidence in your idea and also seeing if there is actually an appetite for what you're trying to raise the money for. You will very quickly get an understanding of if your community, your crowd, your potential beneficiaries feel as if what you're raising money for is needed. And when they back you and they get excited about what you're doing, that can really help to build that validation and give you a real confidence boost. Crowdfunding can help build awareness not only around your project, but also maybe your club as well. Quite often we hear stories from different projects that say, we thought we were quite well known in our community until we crowdfunded and realized that actually half of our community didn't even know we were there, didn't know that we had charitable status or that we were a social enterprise, thought we were a limited, company and that we were completely self-sufficient. Didn't realize all of the great community work and engagement that we already do. So it can be a really great way to build awareness. And along with that comes advocates. So people that are actually kind of shouting from the rooftops and telling your story on your behalf and engaging with you in that way. And that can really foster some strong connections going forward and help to build on some partnerships potentially for the future. You may want to learn some new skills. We're here to kind of upskill you if needed and help support you every step of the way. And then there's the extra funding or match funding opportunity that I mentioned. So over the years, we've worked with various different organisations, everyone from local authorities all the way through to some big national corporate companies, all of which have pots of money that they would like to distribute to eligible projects. And we are here to help distribute that money to those projects. It's been really rewarding seeing so many different projects of different sizes be able to have a boost in their fundraising by being able to access some of the match funding available. We're going to focus a little bit on the Sport England Movement Fund, which is probably the most relevant fund for those of you attending the call this evening. I would highlight, though, that you can receive match funding from more than one of our partners. So when you go through this process on the slide here of actually filling in the information that we need in order to essentially match make you or your project with our funding partners, you might find you've actually been matched with a few of our partners that your project could be eligible to receive funding from. I do encourage you to apply for everything that you think would be a good fit for your project, because you could find yourself in the position where you're receiving pledges towards your project from multiple partners. So essentially, when you're setting up your campaign, there's a few steps that you need to follow in terms of setting up your draft campaign. One of which is the extra funding section. It's a very kind of simplified section. Essentially, it's tick boxes. So tick the box to allow us to share your details with our funding partners. So that would be your project details. And then also who's likely to benefit from your project. You'll also have a couple of questions to do with kind of outcomes in terms of what you're hoping to achieve with your project outcomes, etc. And just tick as many as are relevant to your particular project. You will then be able to see in your project dashboard, where you can manage all aspects of your campaign, who you have been matched with from our extra funding or match funding partners. You can see here on the screen, this particular project has been matched with Sport England Movement Fund, and they simply would go on to apply for that fund. These applications are probably around 15 minutes to complete, which I know some of you will be gasping on the call because normally a grant application can take hours, if not days. So in terms of the application process, again, it's really stripped back, really simplified. You can go into that application, check the questions, make sure you've got all of the information you need to hand in terms of things like governance, organisational structure, all of those kind of basic bits of information you'll need to provide. But bear in mind that our funding partners will also be looking at that project page that you've started to create. So the project page is supporter facing. So that's where you get to go to town and talk about how great you are, how wonderful you are, all of the brilliant things that you're doing, flood it full of images and make it really engaging. And those applications are going to be more kind of data driven, qualitative and quantitative, talking about the need, the demand, the outcomes, the impacts, all of those types of things. Those two things combined will create a really rounded and strong application for our partners. So bear that in mind when you are drafting your campaign and also applying for any extra funding. So the Sport England Movement Fund, you could receive up to £15,000 towards your project target, and that would be up to 50% maximum of your target. So what we mean there is if your project target was £30,000, and we're talking about your crowdfunding campaign target, you might actually have a much bigger amount of money that you need to raise in order to get your overall project off the ground, especially if it's kind of pitch facilities or club redevelopment. But your crowdfunder might just serve a certain portion of that in terms of fundraising. In this instance, your initial target is £30,000, so you could receive half of that from Sport England Movement Fund of £15,000. So the funding priorities for the Movement Fund are people living on low income, older people, girls aged 5 to 16. I'm not going to read them all out to you. You can see them on the screen here, and we'll also circulate all of the fund criteria with you. But it's a really great fund to access. Essentially, the Movement Fund is a fund that Sport England are providing to get communities physically active, to increase participation and get people moving. I mentioned rewards a little bit earlier on, and rewards are something that's quite unique to us as a crowdfunding platform. It's the ability to offer something that you give back to your supporters in return for their financial contribution. It's not things like shares or, any control of the club or anything like that. It is very much things that are either tangible products or services, maybe experiences, or in the case of Alton Hockey Club, they did really well with their sponsorship offer. And you can see that on the slide here. They had some quite high priced rewards, really, but quite a lot of them were taken up. So things like sponsor receipt, which is a really lovely thing to be able to give back to a supporter. Sponsoring bits of the pitch as well, so squares of the pitch, and they had different tiers depending on what area of the pitch you would be sponsoring. And we'll talk to Helen and Kate about that reward offer a little bit later. One thing I will say about rewards as well, if you have capacity to do so, it's a really great way to be able to reach out to your networks, maybe your business community or your existing membership, to see what they might be able to gift you to add as a reward to your page. Whether that's a voucher for a meal for two at the local kind of high street restaurant, whether that's somebody within your network who's got a skill set that they could actually add as a reward. Maybe they're an accountant and it's self-assessment time, and maybe they could do a reduced self-assessment for somebody. And they might save themselves a bit of money by claiming that through your page rather than with the accountant themselves. We do know that offering rewards on a crowdfunding campaign can typically boost the average pledge by around 30%. So ultimately, it's helping you to raise more. It doesn't necessarily mean it's because you are selling or people are claiming lots of these rewards. it works in a few different ways. Yes, it's going to incentivize people to potentially give a bit more to claim one of these rewards. It also gives you a really good angle for promotion. So you can focus on promoting some of these rewards to specific audiences. It also can be a great icebreaker for going and speaking to people about your crowdfunding campaign because it becomes a call to action along with sharing your campaign, donating money to the campaign, or could they offer a reward for you to list on your campaign? There's a few different ways in which you're able to engage with your community, and reward offer is one of them. This is the hardest part of crowdfunding, I'd say. So, connecting with your crowd. And some great tips to be able to do that is actually to split your crowd into smaller groups so that you can understand who sits within these different groups within your community. Things like local businesses, friends and family, schools, other organisations, so community organisations predominantly, press, radio, and then vary that communication. So, how are you going to contact each of those groups? Is it going to be via social media, do you think, predominantly for, say, let's just say other community groups? You're going to reach out, put something out there on social media. Are you going to go and speak to them in person? Maybe you have a mailing list already for your existing members. For friends and family, you might pick up the phone or drop it into the family group chat. So think about how you're going to approach each of these groups of people, and the chances are they will vary. Try and think about the most effective way to engage with them. And then think about how you're going to tell your story. So, what message, what thing about your project is going to resonate best with each group? Is it that actually for the local business community, it might be that reward offer? You go out with that call to action of please, could you gift us a reward? And in return, we will focus a couple of days of our social media posting about how great that business is, and we'll pin it to the top of our socials page. Please, can you share it with your customers? We'll put it on, our posters and things as well. And then you're broadening their customer base, you're broadening your supporter network, so it's mutually beneficial. So that might be the thing that is the hook for the local business community. For your existing membership, it might just be, they will be the direct beneficiaries of this improvement. So make sure you're leading with that when you talk to them. And then always make sure that you keep your supporters in the loop. So reach back out to people that have supported you, keep people in the loop via updates on your page as well. And you can refer to something that we call a network map to help you do that. This is just a bit of a snapshot of an example of exactly that. So with a network map or with a network spreadsheet, you can think about your different audiences and have them maybe in one column. Think about the best way to communicate with them in a second column, and then have a bit of a status update so you can keep track of your promotion to date, especially if there's a group of you doing this. It's a really great method to make sure that you're staying on top of any promotion and marketing. And also, you can really see where things have worked and where things haven't, and how you might need to actually go back to the local leisure centre. Although you've spoken to the manager and dropped off flyers, you might want to check in and see if anybody's actually picked up those flyers, if any of the staff have been talking about your crowdfunding campaign, and maybe what else you could do to support them to actually kind of champion your fundraising efforts. As somebody who's managed to do all of this incredibly well in and be successful is the Alton Hockey Club. So they successfully raised over £37,000 in order to upgrade the pitch, enabling them to support local schools and disability access, and of course those multi-sports groups to engage in participation as well. They were supported with £15,000 from the Sport England Movement Fund and are in the process of applying for the Pitch Together Fund as well. So what better people to speak to than Kate and Helen about their experience. So if I could welcome Kate and Helen to the screen, please.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
hi both. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
I'm going to stop sharing so we can see your lovely faces. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about your project?
Our pitch, our current pitch, our Astro was laid, I think, in 2007. And anyone that knows anything about AstroTurf knows that that's probably a bit too long to be relying on a pitch. So we are very in need of this kind of crowdfunding to help us get over the line with getting our new pitch up. We're quite a big club, so we have 12 teams across our men's and ladies, with sort of junior teams and minis teams all the way down to kind of age 5 or 6, some of our youngsters. We share our pitch with some other community teams, so football, walking football, and schools. So there's a big need in the community for it, and yeah, this was our part of it.
Amazing. And I mean, you did really, really well, having the maximum amount from Sport England and then also all of that community support. Was it the match funding that was the draw to crowdfunding? What was the kind of thought process behind raising money in this way?
Well, I suppose it was me that started off because my local cricket club had done a successful crowdfunder, and it gave me the idea because at first I thought, if I'm honest, they were a bit silly because they did it in January, and I thought, what a crazy time to be asking people for money because everyone's broke. But actually they smashed it. And so I thought, well, why not try it? And I looked into loads of different ways of doing the funds, and I kept coming back to the crowdfunder, and I just kept thinking this feels like the best fit for us. So I came to one of your seminars actually, and sucked in all the information and did our research and stuff. And that's the way I sort of took that to the committee, and that's the way we decided to go.
Amazing. That's always nice to hear that you've been to one of the webinars as well. That always makes us feel it makes us feel good. But you're right. I mean, what's interesting, you say that, Helen, is I think if everybody on the call was to actually maybe go and speak to some other clubs, they'd probably find locally that they have done it. Or even to search on our website, you can actually search kind of geographically or via sport as well, and just see who's done this locally to you and pick their brains about it. Because sometimes you get a surprise as to who's managed to do this successfully.
Yeah, and I think actually it sort of inspired our cricket section as well. So whilst we are independent sections, we're all part of the same sports club. And I think they had a bit of FOMO, and they were like, oh, these guys managed to do this really well. So now actually they're just at the end of their own crowdfunder, and they've also managed to secure the Sport England Movement Fund as well. So they're really pleased.
I feel like you're starting a bit of a crowdfunding revolution in your area, and I'm here for it. It's
Yeah.
great. So how did you guys go about promoting your project then? Did you take any kind of hints and tips from the cricket club, or did you just go for it with your own plan?
It was a bit of both, Helen, I think, wasn't it? Like, I think we knew the importance of making the page kind of interesting to people and stand out. And we have a video on there that kind of nicely sums up what we do, which I think was a big draw for people. And then we tried to get across our whole community. So for some people that was social media, and our WhatsApp community, kind of promoting it across those channels. For some of our ex members or older members who aren't as active kind of on the pitch, it's very important for them to kind of keep the legacy of the club going and where it is. So we reached out to them on more of an individual basis, kind of at like face-to-face, socials, emails, that sort of thing. So it was a mix of all different media really to get the most from it.
Amazing. The perfect kind of strategy, really, because as I was saying just a few moments earlier, it's really important to understand who you're trying to communicate with and how it's going to land. And quite often we see with unsuccessful crowdfunders that what they might do is kind of go, but we've put it all over socials. And you think, but not everybody's on there, especially your demographic of your club and you know where they kind of reside and what they do. So actually, for some people, it might just be purely face to face, or it might be literally flyering the local community. So it's whatever works for you. And it sounds like you had a really good understanding of that, which is really
Yeah.
important.
I think as well it helped that we sort of started talking about it in advance of actually pressing the button. So we sort of contacted quite a few people in advance and sort of got promises. We sort of said, this is what we're planning to do. Would you be on board to support us at the point we're ready to go? And we sort of had all these like promises and pledges in the background from all the sort of face-to-face conversations that Kate sort of alludes to. And actually then what we were able to do is Kate was able to sort of contact them all on the day that we went live and give that one big sort of launch moment, where it meant that we didn't waste any of our crowdfunding time trying to promote it. We'd sort of did that in advance and made sure we were prepared.
You both get a gold star because you've probably heard me saying that to people in previous webinars.
Was a big key to the success. I'd really recommend that people do that. And then also it gives people a bit of a buzz because the percentage you get like a little like a dashboard that shows how close you are to achieving your goals. So it went up quite a lot quite quickly, which is a good then incentive to keep going.
Definitely. And you've hit the nail on the head. The trickiest thing about crowdfunding is, well, there's two elements really, is understanding that crowd, understanding that audience and how you're going to connect with them and kind of get that message across in a way that speaks to them. Quite often we're a little bit blinded by our own passion and our own involvement, and we think, well, why is it not important to others? And you have to find that way in from the different supporter groups. So is it that they want to see the pitch improvements, or is it actually that they want to sponsor a seat because a member of their family's been involved for years, or what is it? And the other thing is actually keeping up the momentum, and that can be quite challenging, can't it? So
Mm.
those tricks like having those promised pledges for the moment that you go live, or having some rewards in your back pocket, maybe that you want to add on partway through, or you've got an event coming up in the calendar of the club and actually you're going to utilize that for a little bit of crowdfunding promotion or something.
We made like a mock-up of the pitch on a, well, I say we, Helen did it on a big, like a big piece of card, and we put it on an easel at one of our social events. And actually, it was a really good talking point, and people wanted to kind of put their pledges on physically during that.
Wow.
People had had a couple of glasses, and so they were more generous, and like so that was another good way of just kind of putting it in front of people.
Yeah.
I think as well, it was important. It became apparent quite early on that, as you said earlier, actually some of our products were on the pricier side. So we really encouraged some of the teams to club together and either buy something between them, or to do a hockey match and collect all their match fees and chip in. So actually, some of the squares have actually been bought by under the team name. So
I
it's
love
not
that.
just individuals, because obviously, not everybody's got £300 they can drop. So we also got people to organise like mixed hockey events, or if they did a social, then anything that they raised from that they could then put towards a square under the name of that project. So that was a nice way to do it, a little bit more collaborative, where people could chip in a little bit less but still gain.
I
Yeah.
love that. And that exactly that word I love, collaborative. Collaboration is at the heart of successful crowdfunding. So collaborating with you guys as a team behind it, but also with the community, with others around you, so that they feel part of it. That's going to really help them to build that momentum and continue that success if they feel that actually they're kind of partly responsible for its success, really. I love that. You were obviously, sorry, Kate.
Was going to say, Phil, because I know this is like hockey specific. I think actually, like the squares on the pitch and the seat ones really struck a chord with players, and there was like not arguments, but there was like keenness for like someone who's played all their life at left back wanted a particular part of the pitch, and like someone else was very keen to get the penalty spot because of certain like memories that it evoked for them. We had like whole families wanting to like stand together on the pitch, if you like, in
Oh,
one area. So, and you mentioned like with the pit with the people that might we've got one family in particular. They wanted specific seats next to each other in a certain part because one of them had passed away, but he always used to sit in a particular spot. So I think it helped to like engage us as a community again of actually how much history there is in the hockey club there, and how important it is that we keep that going physically in that space. So those are just like other bits that came from it.
that's really lovely. And I guess it's so easy when you're, especially when you've got the day-to-day running and when you're kind of in the midst of fundraising because you're looking towards the future and trying to build something and kind of almost regenerate something, it might be quite easy to lose sight of the impact that it actually has for
Yeah.
people that have attended, participated, or just the community as a whole. So what a lovely way to kind of be reminded that actually it's got such a great legacy and impact. Sorry, Helen, were you about to say something?
No, I was just
Oh.
nodding.
You were supported with the maximum amount of money from the Movement Fund. How did you find that process of application?
Um, it actually, I can't fault it to be honest. Like it was very straightforward, and when you go on to that, it's a while since we've done ours now, but I'm sure I'm right in saying when you go onto that page on the website, it talks you through how to do the different parts and what useful information to put in your application and what's more likely to help you have a successful application. So it doesn't tell you what to do, but there was a lot of guidance on there. Myself and Helen don't necessarily write pledges for a living. That isn't like what we do, but we found, I'm speaking for both of us, but it was fairly straightforward. We just took an afternoon between the two of us, with a laptop open and did it. It probably wasn't quite 15 minutes, but it wasn't hours and hours either. Maybe we're just a bit slow, but it was somewhere. I don't remember it being an arduous process, and actually I think there was lots of useful information on there about how to do it. And then afterwards, when the crowdfunding was done and we knew we'd hit the target for the to get the match funding, the communication between us and the relevant people within that has been really good. It's been very straightforward and they've been very helpful.
They are a great team. And then what's really lovely about the Sport England kind of movement fund in particular is as soon as you put in those applications, it really does open up the channels of communication with their team.
Yeah.
So if there's bits of information that they need clarification on, or if you're kind of sitting just on the fringes of the fund, they will feed back to you, and they may well ask you some more questions. I know from my own experience when I've, written grant applications for different things and committees that I sit on, sometimes you just get a no with no feedback, and that can be really disheartening. So actually, even with the movement fund, worst case scenario, it might be a no first time, but they will open up that communication with you and you can always go back to them, ask for feedback, pick it apart and actually reapply if needs be. But they will support people predominantly if they are eligible to kind of get through that application process for an approval as best they can.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about those kind of added benefits at the beginning of the session, and you've mentioned some of them already this evening, which have been really beautiful, actually, like, that realization of that legacy and that impact. Has it helped you, do you think, in any other ways? So maybe developing some kind of partnerships or maybe sponsorships or anything in terms of, in addition to the financial raise that you've noticed, awareness maybe?
I think not specifically, but I think it really did bring everybody together. I think it's been really difficult. I don't know if other sports clubs on this call really have the same issue, but I think since COVID and the lockdowns and stuff, it's been very difficult to bring people back together after that initial excitement of being allowed to play hockey again and stuff. So we have started to, we'd started to feel a little bit separated, and actually by doing this together and really encouraging everybody to join in and then re-engaging with our ex-members who we don't maybe see very often, I think that's just been really nice to get that sort of family club feeling back. And I know there's no sort of monetary value to that, but actually from a sort of a club point of view, I think it really helped us all get on board with the project. And to Kate's point, you can see the progress and it's exciting to watch the bar go up and all of that stuff, which is great. And so I think that it's just been really nice to touch base with some of those people that we don't see very often or haven't seen for a very long time, and also club together a little bit more as a full community of 12 teams rather than 12 individual sides,
I love that. And something that we talk about in our kind of more generic kind of sports crowdfunding webinars is that actually sports clubs and kind of physical activity organizations, whether it's a community organization or, just a volunteer group, tends to be really pivotal, sorry, in like the heart of communities. And actually it kind of shines a light on that, doesn't it? Where you kind of take a step back and go, oh, we are all in this together. And actually we've got all of these people coming to support us. And I think that's a really wonderful thing for yourselves to experience, but also for the community. It's a real reminder for everybody involved. One thing I will say to those of you on the call as well, and hopefully this will be of use to you, Helen and Kate, is in terms of thinking about a crowdfunding campaign with quite a lot of kind of longevity. So you've done this really successful campaign, which is wonderful. Make sure, when you are successful with the Pitch Together Fund as well, and you're able to kind of start implementing some of the things you're raising money for, post some of those updates to your page to kind of keep that communication going. It's a really lovely kind of digital archive of your achievements, not only fundraising, but all of those great messages of support and things. And then if you go on to apply for any other funding kind of outside of crowdfunder land, you can always put a link into an application and say, look what we achieved. We got support from our community to do this and we raised X amount of money. So it can be something to refer back to as opposed to something that you do and then it just kind of sits there forevermore, because it's always active. You can always access it on our site. Right, we've got a really nice amount of time left for some questions actually. So if I could bring Larry onto the screen as well, and we'll see if we've got some questions coming in from the audience. I'm gonna shine a spotlight on you so you can join us. There we are. Hello. We've had a question come in from Janet. Can you go into your page and update it at any time, both the front end and also the extra funding elements? Yes, absolutely. So in terms of your kind of supporter facing side of the page, if you like, you can always edit that. So you can add to it, you can amend it. The only thing I would say with that is if you're applying for any match funding, just make sure that whatever's written on that page does also echo what you've put into the application. The last thing you want is for two completely separate stories where you're applying for money for one thing and actually your page doesn't say any of those things and you've gone off on a completely different tangent. But yes, you can edit the content of your page, you can edit any images, videos, you can add those at any point. You can't edit your target unless you kind of talk to us, essentially, because that's pretty much set in stone. You might have made a mistake with the target. Some people do, that's fine. Just contact support at Crowdfunder and they can walk you through the process of amending that. And again, if you've applied for any match funding, you might need to communicate any of those changes with our match funding partners, the ones that you've applied with. The only other thing which is tricky to edit is any rewards that somebody's actually claimed, because you'd be changing the goalposts. They've already kind of claimed something and you don't want to change what that is. There is a process. If you've made a mistake, that's fine. We're only human, but you can't do it without kind of a few steps from our side. In terms of that kind of dashboard and the admin side of things, you can always edit the back end of your page, and that will potentially trigger some match funding, or it might remove some match funding depending on what you're changing and what you're editing. But yeah, there's a lot that you can do. You've got a huge amount of control over what it is that you're doing. I don't know if Helen or Kate, you had any experience of needing to change anything or edit anything.
Well, our original target was the 30,000, like the example that you shared, because obviously we thought let's go for the same as the match funding. But when we got to that, we wanted to add a stretch target. So our stretch target was actually 40,000. So a little bit sad we didn't quite get to it, but actually we should have just been super impressed with the fact that we got to 37, whatever it was. But yeah, we wanted to add the stretch of 10 because we wanted to build on that momentum and really see how far we could push it. So that is a big change that we did make. But as for the rest, we really made sure we were sure on the rewards and all of that, because we just didn't want to make a mistake. And we really thought all that through in advance, really.
And that's the key, really, is putting the time into the planning is probably the most important thing you could be doing. Like with anything, any applications, I imagine with the Pitch Together Fund as well, if they're kind of getting everything, all the ducks in a row before putting that application in, that's going to put you in the strongest position.
I think it's worth sitting down for an afternoon, whoever's going to put it on, and just do it all in one go and be happy with it. That seemed to work for us. And we're not particularly we know we're around a computer, but we're not we don't know what we're doing really with this sort of thing, and we managed it just fine.
Amazing. Is that the same, Larry, with the Pitch Together Fund as well, in terms of kind of just take that time, have a look through the process, and then kind of get that all done with a bit of planning?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I guess for a loan application, it can be a little bit more kind of comprehensive and quite a lot of detail. So what I would say is if you do sit down and plan and you're not quite sure, please pick up the phone to us. I think we'd absolutely kind of like to see the application process with the Pitch Together Fund as kind of a collaborative process as well. So very much happy to talk to people as they're building their applications to make sure that when it comes in, it's right.
Amazing, thank you. We've had a couple of questions about exceeding targets and can you kind of exceed a target, have a second target? And you mentioned there, Helen, about a stretch target. And yeah, absolutely, you can. You can essentially have two goals in mind. So you can have your initial target, which in this case was £30,000. And then you can have something that we call a stretch target, which essentially is an additional goal that you're working towards, especially if you've got time left live on your campaign. It just gives your supporters that next kind of milestone to try and reach. One thing to bear in mind with the movement fund specifically is any amount of money that they're pledging towards your project will go towards your initial target. So in the case of Alton, they chose that £30,000 target in the hope that Sport England would pledge £15,000 towards that, the maximum amount of money. The other thing to bear in mind is with the movement fund, you do need to hit and reach that initial target to secure their pledge. So make sure that that is a realistic target for you in order to generate half of that from your community to secure that money. But yeah, of course, you can kind of reach for the stars after that if you want to, and you can set that stretch target. And if you're reaching it, you're getting close to it, you can increase that further. That's a movable milestone, but just be really clear on your initial target, understanding that the match funding goes towards that target. So include the amount when you're thinking about how much you need, and then that you will need to hit that target to secure the movement fund money. Okay, question from Chris. Can you extend the target once you've reached it? Absolutely, yes. Would you recommend including regular donations? That's a really great question. You have the ability to turn on that function if you want to when you're setting up your campaign. It can work really well for some organisations. I don't know if that's something you opted for, Helen or Kate. No?
No, I think we just wanted to stick to the basics first.
Completely understandable. I think it will be kind of case by case and project by project, depending on what your financial needs are. It might be that there is ongoing costs that you want to be able to cover. So you might decide to switch on that functionality. Not everyone will go for it, but they'll be given the option in the checkout flow as to whether they'd like to opt to give you a regular amount of money. And that is on a kind of full weekly cycle. So depending on what your fundraising needs are and whether you need that kind of ongoing trickle of money coming into your account, you can absolutely switch that on if you want to. Okay, we've got a few more slides, just a few hints and tips to go through. So it's a bit of a call out for last questions before we move on to the next section. One thing I'm going to ask Helen and Kate is, due to your success, do you think it's something that you would consider doing again if the club needed to fundraise?
Yeah, I mean, I would. I'm sure. Like it was actually quite a fun process. Like I have to say, it was a bit daunting when we first sort of it came. It was me and Helen that were going to do it, but actually, it was really fun. And actually, you think about all the stuff that when you're having to write the application, think about all the stuff that you do as a club for the community. Who's benefiting from it, and that kind of is a really good. It's like a nice pat on the back, isn't it? And then to actually see your donations come in and see people like getting behind it, it's a real boost. So yeah, absolutely.
About you, Helen?
Yeah, I agree. I think we would do it again. It's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because it's always almost sort of a bit embarrassing asking for people for money, and I think that's a bit British almost, But I'd sort of, like I said, I'd sort of seen the local cricket club do it and smash it, and I thought, do you know what? It's time to just have a go. And if it failed, it failed, but it didn't. It was great. And I think we'd probably leave a little gap before we asked again, because I think invariably you'd probably get the same sort of people who are willing to support, who would support again. But I absolutely think it would be worth another punt for sure. If we had another project in the pipeline, why not? And it was easy. It was easy.
I love that. And you're right. We talk about things like supporter or donor fatigue. And that's something to be mindful of. Absolutely. I would say it's definitely worth when you've kind of experienced it, because it can be really fun. I've run my own as well, and actually it becomes a little bit, you wake up in the morning and you're checking to see if
Yeah,
that progress bar's gone up. And you're like, oh, what's going on
absolutely.
today? Um, and it can be really fun. And I would say factoring it into an overall fundraising strategy. So it has its place within other things that are going on as well. So maybe it's not, we're just going to do one big campaign each year. It might be that you do a few different prize draws, or you do a campaign specifically because you might be able to access some money from, partners, or some smaller campaigns throughout the year in amongst other stuff, but it definitely has its place. And we do see lots of people come back and do it again, which is exciting. Okay, question from Janet. Can the same club apply more than once for match funding for different projects? What are the timescales? Yeah, absolutely, you can. So each of our funding partners will have different kind of criteria and different T's and C's set out around exactly that. But again, we often see projects come back time and time again, applying with different projects and different fundraising needs and accessing the same funds. So yes, for example, the movement fund, there will be some T's and C's around that, but I think it's potentially within, I think it's maybe one every 12 months, possibly with the movement fund, but please don't quote me on that. It will be within their fund page, and I'll make sure I share that with you. Some of our other funding partners, you can apply up to kind of 3 times in a 12-month period and be successful. So it really is fund on fund, kind of case by case. So look through all of them, and we'll share the extra funding and the match funding page with you all so you can take a look through. How long did you run the campaign for at Alton? That's a great question, Helen and Kate.
Uh,
I think was it 3 months, Ellen?
at the maximum, I think we went for, which is the three.
Yeah.
It was a bit difficult as well for us because we did it over the summer when we don't obviously see players week on, week out. So we wanted to go for the maximum amount of time to make sure that we could spread the word effectively. Because I think once you're in the winter season, you're going to see people a couple of times a week. And we were really conscious that over the summer period, that would be a little bit more difficult. So we went for the full.
Amazing, thank you. And what we're actually seeing more now, just a bit of anecdotal data, because we've done a bit of a deep dive into our platform, is that it used to be people would run short campaigns, and we used to recommend that people would run short campaigns, so maybe 4 to 6 weeks, to be able to keep that momentum up, because it can be a challenge to keep that momentum up for a long amount of time. But what we're actually seeing more now is that there's a bit of a shift in a trend to running slightly longer campaigns, because it does enable you to encompass things that are going on outside of the crowdfunder. You might have events, or you might have in-person things. And also, as long as you've got a strategy to kind of keep that momentum going, there's no reason why you can't run longer campaigns and keep those donations coming in. So it's great that you actually ran it for that long and saw that momentum throughout the whole thing. I think that's brilliant.
Can I ask a question, Zoe? Is that
Of
all right?
course, yeah.
Just in terms of when, I guess, in the context of using crowdfunding as match funding, when is a good time for clubs to run their campaigns? As in, at what point in the application process, I guess?
So in terms of, so you need them to raise, if you just run everybody through again in terms of what it is that you are needing from the clubs in terms of their kind of match towards the Pitch Together
So
Fund.
there isn't a requirement. There's no kind of set percentage that we need, but I think it is a good, what we're seeing, again, kind of anecdotally through the pipeline, is it's a good way to kind of help one kind of engage the community in the project, which is what we want as Pitch Together Fund as well. But two, it's a good way of kind of closing the gap, because often clubs might not want to take on a huge loan, and actually there's scope for them to raise and bring about 30 grand to the project. So I think from our kind of perspective, we could either look at it when they're still in the process of match funding, and we could then say, it's subject to the funding coming through. But I'm guessing just from an appetite and kind of getting people on board and getting the crowd involved, when is a good time, I guess, in terms of when the project's starting to become deliverable?
I think in terms of kind of accessing all of the relevant funding and then being able to deliver on that project, there
Yeah.
will be timeframes as well that Sport England need people to stick
Okay.
to in terms of kind of the deliverables. Helen or Kate, off the top of your head, do you know what those are? Because it has escaped me.
Um, yeah, it's something like 90 or 100 days or something from when the project closes, but we are still like, we are kind of not quite over the line, and I had a conversation with people at Sport England who I believe then had a conversation with Sporting Assets, who then amongst themselves decided that they would put an extension on that. So I think I think they just want to make sure that they're not, my understanding is they're not pledging money and then nothing happens with it for like months and years. I think if they can see that the work is being done and that the project is getting over the line, they were quite happy then to kind of go with that, if that makes sense. But roughly, they said, I'm sure it was 100 days. I had 3 months in my head as what
Amazing.
we were trying to work towards, if that helps.
So I would think about potentially working backwards then. You've got your end goal of when you need this thing to happen. And then if you're working backwards to make sure that whatever you're doing, you are potentially going to be able to deliver within that time frame.
Yeah.
So I would probably, my mind would be setting up your crowdfunding draft page and applying for Sport England, knowing that potentially you're going to receive a pledge from Sport England. Therefore, you're able to kind of raise some amount of money yourselves. And once that's kind of been approved and you're maybe starting the crowdfunding process, I would think about reaching out to yourselves at Sporting Assets to have that conversation. That way, Larry, you've got eyes on what it is that they're doing. And as you said, it could be, subject to a
Yeah,
successful campaign, we'll be able to approve the application.
yeah, absolutely. Because I guess from our end, we're flexible, so it's kind of
Yeah.
understanding then what works best for Sport England and
Yeah.
the project itself.
Because we got a bit panicked when we could see that like that time, because you get like reminders from Sport England, you need to like have your project, like have you got the rest of the money, and then but actually once we had that conversation with them and they'd had that conversation with Sporting Assets, it all was fine. So I think just having, that's probably something I would have done earlier in hindsight, is just have those conversations earlier to kind of join up all the dots.
Yeah,
Amazing.
absolutely.
Just very quickly replying to Chris's question in the chat, noticing that the Alton Hockey Club project is always on, so it's still kind of actively receiving donations, and that is an option that people can again opt for. So actually, you're not actively promoting the campaign. Things like the rewards are no longer able to be claimed, but people can still donate. And what you'll find is, every now and again, you'll see a nice little donation come through into your bank account. So yes, an always on project, Chris, people can still donate to, and it's still essentially active online. Okay, what I'm going to do, thank you so much for joining me for the Q&A. That was really informative, really helpful, hopefully, for everyone on the call. I've just got one or two more slides to go through before we call it a night. But thank you all for joining me. Thanks, Helen and Kate and Larry. And I've got contact details for Sporting Assets, apologies, to share with you all as well. So people can reach out, can't they, with specific questions.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
please do check out the Alton Hockey Club project page. I've put it in the chat 'cause
And
it's a great
donate if you
one.
want.
I love it. Always, always on.
We're
Helen,
always here
always
to
on.
Always
accept.
on. I was going to say, if any of the hockey clubs, like I know Bowden's on here, like if any of them like want to ask us anything outside of, like, we're more than happy to help. So like, yeah, that offer's there if they want it. It's not a problem.
Oh, see, collaboration. We love it. Thank you so much. Such a kind offer, Kate. And thank you for joining me. Thanks to all of the panel. It's
No
been a really
worries.
lovely evening. And I'll just run through those quick slides before we say goodnight. Okay, I'm going to remove some of these spotlights so I can bring my slides back up. Bear with me 1 second. I'll remove my own as well. Right. So we've talked through some really great hints and tips there on how to actually have that successful campaign. And Alton actually mentioned that really good strategy is starting strong. So making sure that you've got some of those pledges in the pipeline for when you go live. I would recommend having a couple of different launch dates in mind. So a bit of a soft launch where you're going back out to that group of people that have promised you those pledges and get them pledging and donating onto your page. And then maybe a day or so later, actually having more of a public launch where you might put out a social media post or a newsletter to your members and saying, we've got this live campaign. That's really going to help to build that momentum straight out of the gates. It's going to look really credible. It's a really strong position to be in for people to look at your page, see that you've got support already, and that's going to incentivize them to give to your campaign as well. Set some realistic targets and realistic goals. We mentioned there about needing to hit your initial target to secure any funding from Sport England with the Movement Fund if you're approved. So make sure you have a bit of a plan in place as to who you're going to reach out to and hopefully how many people you can connect with to bring in donations to reach that target. You can always break a bigger target up as well into smaller milestones, things that you might want to work towards each day or each week, just to help with that messaging to your supporters, make it more palatable. If you're asking them to help you raise a few £1,000s this week, as opposed to asking them to help you reach £30,000 overall, it's a more palatable ask, and it might just be a bit easier to get them pledging as well. Telling your story in a really engaging way, incorporating visuals, videos maybe, just like Alton Hockey Club did. Building that trust, keeping it kind of human-centered as well, showcasing the personality of the organisation, what you're all about. That's going to really help pique the interest of your supporters. And make sure that you're being yourselves, showcasing who you are and what you're all about and being authentic. People really want to connect with the individuals behind the project as much as they want to the project itself. So do try and keep everything very kind of human, very conversational whenever you're creating the page or in any of your video content or any of your promotion as well. And of course, stay connected. Keep in touch with those that are donating to you, maybe that haven't donated, that you might want to go back to and give a bit of a nudge as well. But always keep it in a mutually beneficial way. What is it that's actually speaking to that group of people that might engage them with your potential project and your fundraising? There is loads of support available to help you do this successfully. I've mentioned some of them at the beginning of the session, but essentially engage with us. Take a look at the website, come along to our online events, ask questions in the help centre. There's so many great guides and things to help you to set this up and be successful. And also reach out to the relevant organisations. So with Sporting Assets, you can speak to the Pitch Together Fund team, and you can talk through any eligibility questions, criteria questions. You can reach out to us at Crowdfunder, and you can also speak to Sport England about the Movement Fund. So please do make use of the support available to you. Next steps for yourselves then. Connect with us. So be sure to kind of follow Crowdfunder on all of the different social platforms. We quite often share some kind of inspiration stories. We've also got updates of kind of online events that are going on. So do keep in contact with ourselves. It's a great thing to do as well when you're promoting your campaign to tag Crowdfunder in anything that you're doing, because you may well fall on the radar and it could be your project that our content team are reaching out to actually share your promotion and come and speak to you guys. Add that project to Crowdfunder, start going through the process of drafting your campaign, ultimately go on and launch that project, applying for obviously any extra funding or match funding that you could have been matched with. Start telling your crowd about your amazing projects and raising those funds. As I've said, we're on hand to help you every step of the way, so please do reach out. Thank you for spending your evening with us. We wish you all the best of luck with your fundraising, and we wish you well and can't wait to see you raising the money that you need for your projects. Thank you very much.